Let's move on to a developing story in Venezuela where the opposition leader Juan Guaido has taken an oath swearing himself in as interim president. Now, on top of that, the US President Donald Trump had said in a statement he formally recognizes Guaido as the country's new interim leader. The OAS, the Organization of American States, has also approved this move. Now, all of those political moves come as huge crowds are out in the streets in rival demonstrations by both government loyalists and opposition supporters in Venezuela. This is 2 days after a failed mutiny, in fact, by soldiers hoping to spark a movement to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. But now you've got these huge crowds out in protest. US Vice President Mike Pence also expressed support for the opposition and the protesters. In response, Maduro accused the US of interference in order of a revision of diplomatic relations with the United States. Lots happening. Teresa Bo, following things from Latin America Bureau in Buenos Aires. Tell us about this oath of office. How does it all fit together, especially with this quote-unquote legitimacy given to it by the US and the OAS?
Well, it's definitely a situation that generates lots of tension in Venezuela, with thousands of people on the streets opposing the government of Nicolas Maduro, but also thousands of people on the street supporting the president. A polarized nation between both countries. Juan Guaido gave a speech where he said that he was assuming the executive office as interim president, that his first task was to call for free elections. He's also citing Article 350 of the Constitution, which allows the Venezuelan people to rebel against an authority or a body that violates democratic values in the country and that violates also human rights. Just before Juan Guaido gave his speech, the Supreme Court in the country ordered a criminal investigation of him and the opposition-controlled National Assembly. Guaido already said that his gesture could have serious consequences. There's been several threats against him, saying that he could be detained if he gave this step. Let's not forget that about a week ago, he was already briefly detained by intelligence officers. Of course, the fact that President Donald Trump acknowledges him as a transitional president, and probably something that will follow with other governments in the region, empowers the opposition in the country. What's certain that is happening in Venezuela is that all of those people that were able to see opposing the government, many of them are desperate for food, for medicine, for a deteriorating economic situation. For the government, this is a coup, and a coup they're saying that Voluntad Popular, which is the party that Guaido belongs to, is a terrorist organization that is trying to fill Venezuela's streets with blood.
Even if it does empower the opposition, Teresa, I wonder how much it'll mean to President Maduro. As far as he's concerned, he won the election, he's the president, and he's not a man who really takes a backward step.
Well, that's why Nicolas Maduro won the elections in May last year, even though there were lots of statements made, especially by the company that controls the voting machines, that fraud was committed. The opposition is saying that those elections were filled with irregularities, and that's what the United States is also saying. In spite of this, what we're seeing in Venezuela right now is an unprecedented situation, one where we're seeing an opposition that has the support of the United States, and we're seeing a national government that has the support of Russia and China. We're seeing a country where the opposition has the support of the opposition and thousands of people on the streets and of economic powers, but also a national government that has the support of the military and controls the institutions and the country's natural resources. There's obviously not an easy way of getting out of the current tension that exists in the country. Many are expecting that the government could move against the National Assembly and Guaido in the next few hours. Most of the analysts we have spoken to say that they're still trying to understand what's going on and what could happen because of the tension that this generates in a country that's already polarized and that has already seen lots of violence in the past years.
Teresa, one of our viewers earlier was asking a question about the US involvement, and now that we have this statement from Donald Trump, it becomes even more relevant. Why the United States would want to take this position, why they would want to involve themselves this much. Is it in as much that this is an opportunity, that there is a strong opposition and it is a chance to actually make a dent in this regime in Venezuela?
Well, there's obviously a new president in the United States, and that's Donald Trump, who has a completely different attitude than the previous administration. But for many, many years, the United States has already opposed many of the policies that the government of Nicolas Maduro has taken in the past years. We have seen strong statements from the United States in the past. This is not the first time. The situation is different now. Donald Trump brings a whole different scenario, not only in Venezuela, but also in Latin America, with presidents like Mauricio Macri in Argentina, Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, among other things. But what makes the situation even worse for Nicolas Maduro in this case is not the opposition. I mean, the opposition in the past years, since back in 2017, it has been divided. It lacked a leader. Well, now they have one. But the big problem in Venezuela right now is the economic situation that has forced millions of people out of the country, with people that with a minimum wage, they can barely buy 4 packs of rice. That's the biggest headache for the government, and that's the biggest challenge they've been facing until now.
Thank you for all of that, Teresa Bo in Buenos Aires, following the events going on in Venezuela. The live pictures that we've seen, actually, of these. I mean, this picture doesn't unfortunately show it. We had some high shots earlier which showed the huge numbers. It looked like hundreds of thousands of people out protesting. To be fair, there are pro-government supporters out there as well. This is not entirely anti-government, but I'd say the majority are anti-government. And in fact, let's have a little listen to some of this. So that's Caracas. And interestingly, look at this pictures, live Madrid. Spain protests against Nicolas Maduro as well. Liberación, it looks like it says on one of those signs. I mean, this is turning now into a much bigger movement, you would suspect. And as we were discussing with Teresa Bo, given more legitimacy by the United States, saying that it will now recognize the Venezuelan opposition leader, Juan Guaido, as the interim president. He has taken an oath swearing himself in as interim president. The United States and the OAS, the Organization of American States, say they are now with him. There is another side to this story, of course. Inside Venezuela are the protests, and then outside, in Cucuta, Colombia, near the border, Alessandro Rampietti is there with some of the people who have made it out of the country. But you were telling us earlier, certainly on the news grid, protests there as well.
Yes, Kamal, a number, probably a few hundred Venezuelan migrants who live here right on the other side of the border in Colombia, in the city of Cucuta, have marched all the way to the border with Venezuela on this bridge that you see behind me, the Simón Bolívar International Bridge. They arrived all the way to the middle of the bridge where the Venezuelan National Guard was standing. That's when they started chanting freedom, freedom, down with Maduro. They were also inviting the guards on the bridge to revolt against the government. Everybody here seems quite excited with what's happening in Venezuela. They believe this could be the start of the movement that will bring down Nicolas Maduro. Many of them have also told us that they are dreaming of going back. Their life in Colombia has not been easy. There are over 1 million Venezuelan migrants here in the country. Many are doing menial jobs or informal jobs. They have had a hard time here finding a proper line of work or doing what they were doing back in their country. Yet they're saying that they're very grateful with Colombia, because here at least they were able to eat and send whatever they could save back to Venezuela.
Alessandra, the signal's breaking up just a little, so I'm going to leave you there. But thank you for that update from Cucuta, Colombia.